You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYBC.
WCYTV
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first out of 93 WYBC Indianapolis. I've gotten too many questions over the last couple of days about this one thing in particular, so before we get started, to clear it up, why do we introduce the show the way that we do? Well, for those who only listen to podcasts these days, and I hear you, normally it's kind of standard for a radio host to bring in the show with a quick bumper of what the show is, as well as what station it's on or from. And in this case, the Daily Signal, which is whom I work for, we are who broadcast the show out, and then the syndication partners pick it up. Now, there are a few clever ways that we inject other station titles and monikers depending on the radio or the TV network, but for all intents and purposes, we say first on 93 WIBC because Allison, say hello to the lovely people.
Hello, hello.
She's the board operator at WIBC. She takes that signal and then broadcasts it out from Indianapolis, and then several other stations pick it up, everywhere from Colorado to Arkansas to Florida up to Wisconsin. And so that's kind of why we do things. So how does the Trump administration do things? Because I'm very good at segues. Well, they're continuing doing the exact same thing that they have been doing since day one. And that is they are continuing to do a phenomenal job combating illegal immigration in this country. For the first time in modern polling history, we have seen a serious concern for Americans, this being illegal immigration, in the top 5. In fact, it was number 2 and then number 1, occasionally beating out the economy, which also never happened, during the presidential campaign. Now, on some polls, it's not even in the top 20 in the list of American concerns, which means that it's largely being solved by the Trump administration, and it is very, very popular. And not only in ending illegal immigration as in border crossings, but also in the capture of high-value individuals, mainly people like the leaders of the violent Mexican MS-13 gang in Virginia this morning. Here is Attorney General Pam Bondi.
First reaction is all of our law enforcement officers are safe. That was the number one thing. They're safe. They executed a clean, safe operation, and the bad guys in custody. And thanks to the FBI, we got one of the worst of MS-13 off the streets this morning.
We were able to be out here in force to show the American people to be here in person, that this means a lot to her and the mission. Safety is our primary concern.
So I do see a lot of griping and complaining because Kristi Noem, the Secretary of Homeland Security, did a quick video in front of a group of recently kicked out prisoners, Venezuelan gang members now in the El Salvador prison, a new facility built just for them. And a lot of people were calling the United States cruel and terrible and insensitive, and it's just awful and stinky and gross. And I gotta be honest with you, the majority of Americans like seeing criminals behind bars. They like seeing illegal immigrant criminals especially rounded up and kicked out violently, and they like people who do not go through the legal immigration process, who show up to the country to be turned away and told to get into the back of the line. Now, in the meantime, you're seeing a wild fantasy land over on the left. So Chuck Schumer, who was not really, I guess he was kind of the sort of figurehead leader of the party after everyone else blew out their tires flying 90 down the interstate to the left. Senator Chuck Schumer, the Senate Minority Leader, he's trying to lay low a little bit because everyone wants him gone, or primaried by Representative AOC from New York. And so Hakeem Jeffries, the awkward love child of Barack Obama and Nancy Pelosi, is trying to get up in front of the country and claim that the Democrats have momentum and, quote, the Republicans are in free fall.
We were to withdraw about them having trouble with numbers to get through the so-called big, beautiful bill.
Republicans are in free fall right now. House Republicans are fighting with Senate Republicans. Senate Republicans are fighting with House.
Does he know who he's talking to? The majority of the Democrat Party right now is in a free-for-all civil war over whether or not Jasmine Crockett, the racist crackhead from Dallas, or Representative AOC, the full-on Marxist and socialist, takes over for Chuck Schumer. And Republicans are fighting with Senate. Don't get me wrong. Internal politics, it's a fun game. I hear you. But I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing Senate Republicans and House Republicans fighting. Oh, they're disagreeing about the budget? You mean like Republicans have done since the beginning of time? If there's two things Republicans can agree on, number one, it's that a steak should be served medium rare, unless you're Trump. That's a totally different case. And then number two, the second thing Republicans agree on is that the budget is a mess and we will disagree on it. That's right. One of the core beliefs of the Republican Party is that we're all going to fight with each other about the incremental ways to fix the massive spending abuse in the United States federal government. You're not breaking any new ground there. You're not convincing anyone either. And again, I will point out that not just on the legislation and the executive order side, but also on the PR side, the White House is kind of on a roll. And the Democrats are the ones losing their minds over it. So from the White House today, this post was made, and I'll try to describe it for those who are watching, not via the live stream, but are tuning in on the radio here. This is a picture that is done in an AI filter in the style of Studio Ghibli. Now, look, I'm not much of an anime kind of guy, but it is a cartoon style of a very popular animation. And it is a picture of a federal agent arresting a crying Hispanic woman who is rather obese. And they quote tweeted this image with the White House text, Virginia Basora Gonzalez, a previously deported alien felon convicted of fentanyl trafficking, was arrested by Immigration Customs Enforcement in Philadelphia after illegally re-entering the United States. So she got back into Philadelphia and then she was caught for fentanyl trafficking again. And by the way, this is a post, an animation, kind of a meme in this case, that is based off of these images of the lady crying after she got caught. And the left has lost it over this. Oh, this is so cruel. How could they? Look, they're posting a picture of a person crying. This means it's mean and it's hateful. And it's mean-spirited and downhearted. I can't believe it. Oh, terrible. Terrible, as Charles Barkley might say. No, it's not. A fentanyl trafficker. We're not talking about some guy dealing weed over on the next street. We're not talking about somebody slipping a minor a beer at a party. Both of those things, not legal. But if you're a fentanyl dealer, you're trafficking fentanyl, one of the most dangerous and deadly drugs that has killed way too many people, and even a few would have been too many. That's the crime, and you were kicked out before and then you came back? I have no sympathy for you. Be gone. Whatever you're going to get is far too kind to you. We'll talk about that a little bit later with Jerry Lopez and some awful tweets. This brings us to, however, the House of Representatives, where Representative Elise Stefanik of New York has now withdrawn her bid to be the next ambassador to the United Nations. And the left is upset about this because this means the Republicans will have one more vote. They don't have to wait for a special election in New York. They can hold on to that majority a little bit longer in a more comfortable place. And so if the legislation's doing pretty okay, and the executive branch is doing okay, well, then what does the left have to hit the Trump administration with? Because the tariffs haven't really gone south for Americans yet. We don't know. So far, you have a lot of automotive companies announcing they're going to move to the United States when Trump announces automotive tariffs. Now, again, that may not work out, but at the moment, Americans haven't felt it. So what do Democrats hit them with? Well, after Chuck Schumer bragged quite openly that they had placed all of these federal judges on the benches, James Boasberg stepped into the room. And he got a little salty with the Trump Department of Justice when he said, hey, you need to get those Venezuelan Tren de Araguas members back to the country. None of this removing people on the Alien Enemies Act thing. They need individual special due process where they need to tell a court, I'm not a Venezuelan gang member, despite all of my tattoos saying so. Okay, interesting case to be made. And that's when Boasberg became the new Robert Mueller for the left. Radio crew will catch you in a minute. We're going to talk to the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett cast. So, Robert Mueller, back in the old first Trump administration, was a special Actually, I'm just going to cut straight to let Anderson Cooper, all the way back from CNN in 2019, explain to you, for those of you who may have forgotten, how important Robert Mueller was to the left, how brave this bastion of justice was.
Good evening. For the first time since being named special counsel, Robert Mueller spoke today publicly about the Russia investigation and his report on it. Everything about it was extraordinary, in particular how unpretentious and dutiful and serious Mr. Mueller was. There was no grandstanding, no puffed chest, no boast, no crowing about his accomplishments and how hard he worked. And
I love how you see Anderson Cooper swooning in real time. He was so unpretentious and glorious and majestic, the way his hair flowed down like Aslan of Narnia. It was amazing. I was reading the Song of Solomon, and my mouth was watering watching Robert Mueller cross the fields, majestic like a white pony.
How hard the job was. There was no hurtling insults at anyone, not even those who had been trying to systematically destroy his reputation. No, listening to Robert Mueller today speak for just about 10 minutes, you knew you were listening to a serious person, a person of conscience, and a person who has lived a life of service to this country.
And so they made like mock Catholic prayer candles with Robert Mueller on them. And they ran around with signs in Mueller we trust because they were going to get Trump. He was going to get Trump for Russia collusion based on that nonsense false dossier that Hillary Clinton threw money into. And so it turned out that didn't work out because that's, you can't just claim something over and over and it be magically made true. This is now what the left has elevated James Boasberg of the D.C. District Court to. Despite the fact that Boasberg, in this case, is doing some pretty wild things. What kind of wild things is he doing? Well, he has now ruled that the Trump administration also needs to retain and basically keep safe the signal messages from like the Atlantic signal leaked attack plan, war plan story, where Pete Hegseth gives a checklist of when some F-18s are going to be taken off and bombing Houthis 2 hours before they bombed Houthis. So now Boasberg has assigned himself to this case. Now, he was a judge was supposed to be randomly assigned to this lawsuit. There's a bit of a problem with that. Because the emergency assignments dated March 4th of 2025 stated that right now, you should have Judge Amir H. Ali, who is assigned to an emergency case, which is what this is. However, because James Boasberg is the chief judge in this district, he can assign himself to any case that he wants. So now that brings the number of cases that James Boasberg is presiding over the Trump administration up to 4, where he's issuing blanket sweep injunctions left, right, and center. And an appeals court ruled that she was going to allow Boasberg's stay on Trump removing any other individuals or the Department of Homeland Security removing any other individuals who are illegal, violent gang members from the country. And now Boasberg is putting himself on more cases and more cases. And now he's the new champion of he's the judicial that's standing up for America. And I cannot wait for the Supreme Court case regarding this one. They are now putting all of their faith in Boasberg. And kind of looking at his history, I don't know if the guy who delayed the Hillary Clinton emails being released until after the 2016 election is your knight in shining armor here. So we're going to head over to a different Supreme Court situation, that being the one in Wisconsin where things are heating up rapidly. This is the critical election that the entire country should be paying attention to because this will determine, believe it or not, the control of the House of Representatives over the next couple of years. And we're going to swing over to that with a great guy over from Libre. We'll be back in a second. Got to pick up the radio crew from the commercial break. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. Well, those of you listening on our Wisconsin part of the syndication network might know there's a bit of an election season going on. A Supreme Court seat in the state is up for grabs, and my, are the hands grabbing for it. So to talk a little bit about this issue and why this particular race is so important, the stakes involved, We're thrilled to be joined by Daniel Garza. He's the founder and president of Libre. And of course, we'll link all of that down in the description. Sir, thanks for joining us.
What a pleasure, Tony. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you.
Oh, it's a blast. Let's get right into the stuff here. Tell us why this Supreme Court race is so massive.
Well, for one, obviously, you can tilt the ideological scale of the court, the Supreme Court of Wisconsin, and that'll dictate a lot of how decisions are made and how, it tips the balance on many of the, obviously, the thousands of cases that go through the Supreme Court. I don't know, thousands, maybe hundreds. I'm not sure. Point is, it will tilt, the majority of the ideological scale. It also has national implications in the sense that this race is being funded by people across the country, especially for Suzanne Crawford, who's like, I think 80% of the donations are coming from out of state. That's an astronomical number, but it just, obviously goes to show a lot of folks are interested in the outcome of this race. Mm-hmm. And then I would say also that it promises to tilt maybe the scale or the majority of the U.S. Congress. That's because, the candidate, Suzanne Crawford, was caught promoting her intentions to rig the districts using the levers of the judiciary to make it happen.
So when you say like using the judiciary to make districting a specific way in Wisconsin, what do you mean?
Yeah, so there's some emails that went out that were intercepted. That showed that she made promises that she was going to be involved in redistricting deliberately and intentionally the congressional districts of the state to flip two of the seats. And as you know, Tony, right now the Republicans are driving a lot of legislation as they hold the majority in the House with a 2-vote majority, which would, of course, flip the majority of the House and entirely change the fortunes of the country because of this one Supreme Court race in Wisconsin.
Right. So accusations of gerrymandering in this particular instance are not just serious on perhaps a state legislature threshold, but could change the entire balance of how Congress and the House of Representatives functions.
Right. And it's not so much an accusation as much as it's fact. I mean, she's the one who put out the email. This is time sensitive. This is what it shows on the email. Chance to put 2 more House seats in play for 2026. And she was raising money off of this promise. So that, already talking about outcomes of a Supreme Court decision or of a judge is sketchy. I don't know how ethical it is, to be honest with you, and to raise money on it. That, I think, question goes right at her character and her intentions. So it's political as opposed to judicial, and that should concern every Wisconsinite.
Right. And of course, not to mention, it appears that it's really concerning a lot of the rest of the country as well. If, as you described, so much of the money in favor of Susan Crawford's campaign is coming from outside of the state. Now, I've actually seen individuals on the other side going in for the other candidate who I'm familiar with, Scott Pressler, who had done a pretty amazing job, a pretty incredible lift, a power lift of getting people out to vote for Donald Trump in Pennsylvania for the presidential election. Now he's come over to Wisconsin to raise support for the candidate facing off against Crawford. What do we see as far as the opposition in this case to Crawford?
So, Brad Schimmel, who is the conservative candidate, the candidate who brings a perspective of original intent, who will honor and uphold the Constitution as written, as intended. He is an alumni of the University of Wisconsin Law, I understand, currently a circuit court judge. I believe he resides in Waukesha County. He used to be a former attorney general of Wisconsin, tough on criminals. He had a pattern and a record of that as a prosecutor as well. He's an adoptive father of 2 daughters, a family man. He committed to honoring and upholding the original intent of the Constitution. This matters because, of course, if you don't like the way the Constitution is written, then of course that has a process that you appeal the legislature, the bicameral legislature of Wisconsin, and get them to change it. Well, that's hard to do. Well, then you don't get to change the Constitution. You have to, of course, make decisions that honor the Constitution and its original intent. Here, Brad Schimmel would do that. Susan Crawford, not so much. We know that she is a radical on many current cultural issues. She has a pattern of being lenient with sexual predators. She is also lenient on criminals, really soft sentences. That's been her pattern, and on transgender issues as well. Radical left.
Well, I think that when you're looking at a candidate who believes that the Constitution, whether it be the state constitution of the state of Wisconsin or whether it's the United States Constitution, that it's a living document, that it can change, and that perhaps some of the statements and things are more mere suggestions up for interpretation, I can see why it would be rather concerning to the opponents of Susan if a Supreme Court justice just decided to be, what's the colloquial here, a bit willy-nilly with the Constitution. That's right. Yeah, that would throw a lot of things into a pretty fair crisis, given the amount of cases that every court around the country is hearing right now. We're at a pretty significant cultural divide in the country.
Tony, the problem with that is that ideological whims come and go. Sentiments of a judge change even in their lifetime. There is no predictability. There is no certainty on the way that they're going to vote, and they get caught in this sort of woke culture, like for example, nowadays. And then in 4 years, when you change a president, the sentiment changes again. Do you then change your position? So no, you need a code. You need a principle to base your decisions on. Mm-hmm. And the American people have a constitution that was passed by the founding fathers, and you have to respect that original intent. Again, it's kind of like the Second Amendment. I had a conversation once with an ambassador of Spain, and he said he was just shocked by how Americans can possess firearms. Well, so the reason we do that, sir, is because it's in the Constitution. And if you don't like it, you can change it. That's hard to do. Well, then people get to possess guns until you change the Constitution. The point is, you can't go off ideological whims or personal desires of how you want the law to be. It is what it is, and you have to respect it and honor it. And if I were a voter of Wisconsin, I would choose a judge that would stick to the principles of original intent.
I think that that's a really great point to bring up, because when you're looking at the foundational rights of Americans, the Constitution is supposed to be extremely difficult to change at the national level. It's one of the things that gives me heartburn, looking at other states around the country who have instituted these sweeping referendums on their state constitutions to codify mob rule fueled anger issues permanently onto their state constitution, or until the people decide to vote to change it again the next election. And I really would like to see more stability, by which I mean I'd like to see constitutions be changed slowly, if at all, because you're right, if you start tweaking around with the foundation of the building, it's going to weaken the structure. And the Second Amendment does exist to prevent, a tyrannical government. That is its pure pointed purpose. So when we're looking at the Wisconsin Supreme Court, looking at on the ground, how are things looking right now? Does it look like, Schimmel or Susan have the edge here? What are you hearing?
Well, depending on the poll that you're looking at, it looks like Susan Crawford right now has the preference of white voters in Wisconsin by about 4 to 5 points. I saw a Newsweek poll that I just actually posted on Twitter, where 89% of blacks in Wisconsin prefer Susan Crawford. No blacks are voting for Brad Schimmel, according to this poll, which I think is impossible. But there you have it.
Yeah, that's a little weird.
It's a little weird, right? And Latinos in Wisconsin are split 50-50. Or 49% to 49%.
And there's a major Hispanic community in Wisconsin. It's one of the leading immigration target states for legal immigrants in this country.
Absolutely. And it's a growing community also of citizen Latinos who are more and more across the country also, by the way, beginning to decide the outcomes of a lot of state local, state, and federal races. And in this case, the fact that they're split 50-50 in this Newsweek poll, while it shows that no blacks are voting, is remarkable to me. And it shows how much of a swing vote the Latino community is. Mm-hmm. You can, of course, persuade Latinos based on the merits of what you offer, right? And how you will strengthen America and make sure that, you have a message where all will rise.
Cultural foundations are extremely important to every single one of the Latino communities in this country.
Yeah, absolutely. And this may have something to do with the cultural positions of a radical like Suzanne Crawford, where for the longest time, Latinos have been telling the radical left, we're not going to go there with you, wherever you started, because for the longest time, Latinos were not heard, right? They were not, they were on the outside looking in, and the only ones that were listening
kind of a political prop, one might say.
Exactly, a lot of times, and the only one listening to them was the left of center, and so they created this relationship where they won over their vote for the longest time. But at a certain point, the left just kept going and got really radical, and Latino says, "I'm sorry, I'm just not going to go there with you." And they started looking at, what's going on here on the right. And so more and more, it's been shifting towards the right based on economic issues, cultural issues, but really on how you commit yourself to strengthening America and creating opportunity for all. And you're going to honor American principles. And that starts with upholding the Constitution. If you threaten the Constitution, you shouldn't get our vote.
I think that's the best way to frame this up, and really looking forward to seeing how this shakes out, especially considering how important it is to make sure that when you're looking at the growing community of Latinos who are involved in the political atmosphere, who are very passionate about traditional American culture and making sure that a good system of growth, freedom, the liberties, and rights, many of whom have experiences with, for example, the dictatorships of Cuba or Venezuela, who want that to be kept very far away from the United States. It makes perfect sense why this would be such an important race, given the way. So, unfortunately, with the FCC radio clock cutting us short, got to end it there for now. Daniel Garza, Libre's founder and president, thanks so much for stopping by and giving us a little bit of an inside look here.
A pleasure, brother. Thank you.
We'll be back in just a second. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
Awful tweets, the ones that no one ever deletes. Awful tweets on the Tony Kinnett Show.
On 93 WIPC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. We're going to get into a bit of awful tweets. We've got Jerry Lopez, Indy Spanglish over on X joining us. Jerry, tell the fine people how awful tweets works.
Hey, awful tweets is the best segment of the week. I might be a little biased, but those posts that your friends, your parents, even just randoms put on social media that you look and you're just like, this person has no clue what they're talking about. And we say tweets, but it can be Facebook posts, Instagram. We've even had a Nextdoor app post before. But send those in to Tony or myself at Indy Spanglish. He picks out the best ones. I come in blind, so I get to hear these for the first time with all of you guys.
And we're going to head in blind with a phenomenally horrible tweet from John Harwood. So, again, we're talking about all of these Venezuelan Tren de Araguas members, the MS-13 gang members that are being kicked out of the country and sent straight to, a prison in a different country. And this has really upset those on the left because Tom Homan is really unabashed about it. He's like, look, these guys have raped and brutalized women in this country. And so John Harwood got in front of everyone and said, and I quote, Tom Homan is like an early 20th century Southern sheriff who'd send a mob to find a black kid who allegedly looked the wrong way at a white woman. The mob would bring the mob would bring back a kid who kinda sorta fit the description, and the Homan character would say, string him up. What do you think about that?
I mean, how off base? First of all, it was the Democrat Party that did any of these things. Nothing is more American than taking care of our own, and I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. Just how ill-informed is that tweet? I mean, listen, what have they already said? Well, who's gonna do the dirty jobs? Sounds a lot like who's gonna pick the cotton to me.
I mean, I got to tell you, the idea that Democrats think that ICE is just going in and rounding up anyone who is A, Hispanic looking, I guess, and then B, has tattoos is not true. I know that everyone thinks that,
hey, Tony,
again, he's walking
Tony,
around with like a
record,
paint
I'm 100%
stick.
Cuban.
Go ahead.
Hey, just for the record, I'm 100% Cuban with tattoos, have never been approached by ICE, not one time. Not once.
Fair. Now, this next one, it really tugs at the theological heartstrings. So we talked about that Studio Ghibli anime picture of the fentanyl dealer being arrested. And so Brendan Fraser Crane, a very important Christian individual, I'm told, says, one of the more evil things I've ever seen. If you support this administration, you will not see heaven. Oh.
Yeah, fancy for him to even use the word heaven in there, because I think one of the most important things of Scripture is protecting kids, along with other acts and things that would go against biblical teachings. The left really has no leg to stand on when they even want to bring in religion. That's what socialism is all about, destroying religion and making government your god.
I do want to point out, and this never fails to amaze me, how it's so quick to point out that, oh, you know, Jesus is your imaginary sky king or whatever they say. And then as soon as a moral issue comes up that they think they can stand on, they're like, Jesus wouldn't do this, guys. I don't believe in him, but, you know, Jesus wouldn't do that. I'm sorry, spare me. Those who haven't read Scripture, I don't exactly look to for opinions on Scripture. This is from an article. It's an article that says, Trump administration live updates. Trump rejects the idea of letting Elon Musk see secret plans for war with China, because that was a rumor that was not true at all. Elon Musk was never going to see the United States war plans with China. And Michael Tracy gets out here and says, the existence of secret plans for war with China seems like a bigger story than whether Musk gets to see him. What?
I mean, once again, thank God these people don't actually work in any kind of Department of Defense or any kind of war scenario. You better have plans to go to war with China, with Russia, with Iran, with all of these countries. You need to know how to attack any of these countries should you need it. Only an idiot would get caught with their pants down at any given moment. It's so ridiculous that they even listen. If you supported a guy who pooped himself, I don't think you get to talk about like international law.
Just another little fun fact here, just throwing this one out to the boys and girls. The United States has a plan of war in the Department of Defense, which should be the Department of War. That is what it has been for most of the history of this country. Has a plan to go to war with every country on this earth and a series of different alliances. A very famous couple of pages were leaked of what is called War Plan Red, which is if the United States were to go to war with Canada. This is obviously way before the Trump administration. Calm down. But guys, the DOD does DOD things. Oh, Jerry, I've got one more for you here on the tweet side. Then we got some videos. Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, said knife crime is at an epidemic levels and it is ruining lives across Britain. He said that a little over a year ago. Today he tweeted, confirmed, ninja swords will be banned by this summer. When we promise action, we take it. Ninja swords, Jerry.
Man, I don't know what the Ninja Turtles are going to do now. Shredder might not have any weapons, but what's a ninja sword? Also, isn't the word ninja a little offensive? Come on, what a joke.
Also, we could talk about, the importance of, describing, what the actual technical name of a ninja sword is, all that stuff like that. I do want to point out one particularly funny counter tweet to this, which is if it was true that ninja swords were like a huge cause of violence in the United Kingdom, then don't you think that Japan would have like all of these stabbing attacks? Because, one might think those swords are everywhere in Japan.
Yeah, hey, in the words of the redneck Hilly on YouTube, don't go ninja and anybody that don't need ninja'd.
All right, now I've got a couple videos for you. These are pretty great. I'm looking forward. So this first one that we've got for you that was sent in is Washington State Representative Christine Reeves talking about men and women's sports, and her comparison's a little wild.
I'm feeling compelled, given the debate this morning, similar to your remarks, Madam Chair. I recall a time in our country's history, not that long ago, given that my grandmother just passed away.
She takes a while to get there.
Where people like my grandfather were told that they could not participate in sporting activities because he was a black man.
See, Jerry, the whole men and women's sports thing is just like black people not being allowed to play sports. What do you think?
Yeah, it sounds exactly the same, except for one is guys, and one's based off of race. The other one's based off of actual biology. Listen, I have 4 daughters. I will die on this hill. If you're a biological boy who identifies as a girl, I mean, that's your right, but none of us have to agree with your mental illness, let alone do we need to let 0.004% of the population make any decisions for the rest of us.
I've got 2 more clips, but I think maybe we can squeeze both of them in here. This is Ellie Mistel, who looks like a Scooby-Doo villain, telling us all about what he believes about voting laws and things on MSNBC. This is a wild clip.
Okay, so like what?
Well, we could eliminate all voter registration laws. See, when Democrats get in charge, we try to protect voting rights. We don't make voting easier. Now, I'm all for voter eligibility requirements. We might disagree about what those requirements should be, but, I'm going to say that, there should be an age limit to vote. I might say 16, you might say 18.
Eliminate all voter registration laws of any kind, Chair?
Yeah, but then turn around and says that they want to let 16-year-olds vote. I mean, to me, that's a voter registration law. Obviously, they want to get rid of them. You know why? They want to flood the market with illegals, let the illegals vote, and change the demographic of suburbs, because that's who's really being hit. They already own the cities. So they want to change the suburbs and flood those cities like Jeffersonville, Carmel, Fishers, with these different demographic of people and try to turn these red counties blue. This is BS. Voter registration laws protects who the most? Minorities. You can swing the whole black vote, the whole Spanish vote with just illegals.
That is, in fact, true. Jerry Lopez, it's always great for awful tweets with you, man. Send us more of those in, and we'll catch you next week, dude.
Yeah, have a great week. I'll see you next Thursday, brother.
Radio crew, we'll see you soon. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Okay, folks, I've got one more clip for you that is incredible. So Bill Gates, again, Mr. COVID vaccine guy, and, Microsoft, very important in the history of humanity, and Mr. Super Progressive Donor Man. He has a few thoughts on the origin of the COVID-19 virus, which at this point now, agencies all around the world have confirmed came out of a lab in Wuhan, China. Bill Gates has not got the memo.
It's quite clear in this case that it came across through animals. And almost all our diseases, like HIV, crossed over from chimpanzees in Africa quite some time ago. Ebola came from bats. This also, with one step in between, came from bats. So it's going to keep happening, particularly with climate change, where we're invading a lot of habitats.
Oh, sweet, precious mother and child. Where do you begin with that? So, COVID-19, we do not know where its original origin point was, with this key exception. We do not believe at this point, after looking at the structure of the virus itself, that it originated from animals at all. We believe this was already a virus that was in human possession, that was then experimented on. There was not a case where a guy walked out of the Wuhan labs, reached out into the air, snagged a bat, walked in and was like, all right, let's get a virus out of him. No. Also, the climate change animal disease argument is a really weird one for me. Because the idea that the climate is changing, which causes people to get bitten by bats? I'm sorry. Comment section out there. Can someone please explain that one to me? Please. How would climate change lead to being bitten by bats? I mean, this to me sounds like one of the plagues of Egypt kind of a situation here. or like triggering an Indiana Jones style booby trap? Anyone out there triggering bats to bite you? Like bats, oh, the global temperature, oh, the ocean has risen 0.001 centimeters in the last 20 years. It's time to start biting people. Oh, hey, you diseased bats, you get to the front of the line. The left wonders why the institutional trust that most of Americans used to share in a common way has completely eroded. They don't understand it because they blindly trust all institutions. There's never any, hey, wait a second here. There's never any thought of accountability. Never any of that. All of this blind trust in institutions led to more and more and more and more erosion via really bad decisions that were so bad, yet those in the leftist media, which is what we're going to talk about up next, they completely spaced on the idea that maybe someday people might say you were not trustworthy for doing the cover-up of that particular bad action. And therefore you are no longer trustworthy for any future actions. And that has led to some interesting stuff. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
So the left has got their new Robert Mueller. They got him. They're ready to go. They've got, and by the way, right now the polls in this country are very, very confused. So I mentioned yesterday there were a couple of spot polls regarding Americans really not caring, like whatsoever, about the document signal scandal case. But right now, according to, again, some new polling, and I believe, yes, we are now cleared to talk about this particular poll. There's one part of it that I'm really fascinated with. Conducted between March 24th and 25th, how closely have you followed recent news stories about federal judges blocking President Trump's executive orders? Only 27% said very closely, 44% said somewhat closely, and then the rest, not very closely at all, or they're just not sure. Then, generally speaking, have judges gone too far in blocking the president's orders, not far enough, or is the balance about right? Right now, you have 52% of the country that believes, or excuse me, you have 64% of the country that believes that the judges have either gone too far or not far enough. So 27% too far, 37% not far enough, 25% say about right. So you have 62% of the country that believes that the federal judges right now are in the right in this 1,000 person poll, which is a small poll. But it's rather interesting because here's the catch. The third question is, federal judges are generally assigned to a certain region or a group of states. Should a judge assigned to a particular region or district be allowed to block the president's order for the entire nation? Only 36% agreed. That's a wild disparity between number 2 and number 3. Which means that right now, Americans really have no idea what's going on with the federal judge situations. And the more you apply time to a situation, the more the truth comes out. So if a big information campaign here that, hey, look, we've got all of these federal judges that are keeping Trump at bay, the more Boasberg takes center stage as the judge, a district judge, not the Supreme Court, ordering the president around, ordering the Department of Defense around, ordering the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Justice around, that number is going to go down real quick in a hustle hurry. And there's one other key difference between this and 2019 when the left had their Robert Mueller. The media no longer has the power, the dominance that they did. Caitlin Collins, in trying to talk about the Signal chat, she's the CNN White House reporter, got slapped down because she thinks that in a room of 75 plus reporters, she's entitled to several questions in a row. It did not go her way, and there was no outrage over this at all because the tides have indeed changed.
Does the president feel that he was misled by his national security advisors, whoever it was that told him there was no classified information in there, now that he's seen these messages?
I've now been asked and answered this question 3 times by the both of you, and I've given you my answer. The president feels the same today as he did yesterday.
Okay,
Philip.
I might follow up on what you had just said.
No, go ahead, Philip. Caitlin, I'm not taking your follow-up. Philip, go ahead.
I have a follow-up on something you just said, though, Caroline. That's
Caitlin, I'm not taking your follow-up. Philip, go ahead.
So, I love this. I love this a lot, and for a couple of reasons here. It actually has nothing to do with Caitlin Collins or CNN. It's not even a left versus right issue. The idea that there have been media entities who are so in love with themselves, who think so highly of themselves, that in a room of, again, 75 plus reporters, that for some reason, we've got to stop right here and make sure that she has follow-ups about a question that's already been asked. Like, that's already been asked twice in the room. You remember when you were in school and you would have a kid that would ask a question in the class, some other kid wasn't paying attention, like 2 or 3 minutes later, the kid that wasn't paying attention would ask the same question that was already asked. The whole class would groan because that person was an idiot and wasn't paying attention. Yes, we all remember those kinds of stories. That's what's happening here. CNN is no longer in control. That's not good for those on the left that want to see the entire country think Trump is super dictator man, like they tried last time. And by the way, a lot of this also goes to the White House Correspondents Association, which is like a pseudo-union organizational, really just kind of like a SWAT team for the press reporters, the journalists in the White House press briefing room that used to choose who would be allowed inside the White House press briefing room and who would get to ask questions. Well, the Trump administration said, no, we're going to let like any journalists in the room now. Any of them. And by the way, if Axios, which is not a right-wing publication, wants to be in the rotation of one of the pool reporter teams that follows the president around, yeah, they get to, because the Associated Press does not own that spot. And we'll have some right-wing crews come in, and some independent crews come in, some new crews, some regional radio crews. When does the San Francisco Chronicle or the LA Times, when do they get a reporter in the White House room? The president matters just as much in LA as it does here. Whether you're from Indiana or Florida, Pennsylvania, you should get a crack at the White House press briefing room. The AP and NPR are not trustworthy. And so the White House Correspondents Association is very, very, very grumpy because NPR has been ultimately disgraced. And so they sent out a little picture today. This thing you didn't hear about, I'm going to let you in on it for the first time. The White House Correspondents Association asked members yesterday, to support the AP's press access case by wearing a special little pin that says First Amendment, and when it's at the White House and on TV. The WHCA also sent members a First Amendment graphic to attach to social media profiles, and no one did it. No one cared. Because the era of I'm a super important journalist, look at my pins, look at my ribbons, is over. And so in honor of the collapse finally of the I'm wearing pronouns, I'm wearing pins, I'm wearing ribbons, look how special I am era being over, here is Rush Limbaugh in the 90s forecasting the future of importance. This is Rush Limbaugh on ribbons.
Because I'm wearing these ribbons, I care more than any of you about anything. And these ribbons say so. I want you people sitting at home and you people in the audience, look down at your lapel right now. I want you to do this. Put the camera back on me. Do this. When you look down, what do you see? You don't see anything because you're not wearing any ribbons. It means you're a bigot. It means you're a racist. It means you're a sexist. It means you're a homophobe. It probably means you're a white guy. It probably means you're a European. And you alone are responsible for all the ills of America. But I'm not, because I'm wearing these ribbons.
Oh, Rush, we miss you so much. And this is truly the end of that era. So rest in peace to the media crew. We're going to stick around on the live stream for just another second for just a hint, a smidgen of bonus tonus. Radio and TV crews, we will see you tomorrow for the end of the week. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Take care. All right, live stream crew. There was a little bit of a hearing on in the House of Representatives, a committee. And we talked about the Jasmine Crockett side of the hearing because, Jasmine Crockett yelling, that's day ending in Y, angry rants about whatnot. And Ayanna Pressley yelling about the white cabinet of President Trump or whatever. And both of those are fun. A good time, in fact, was had by all. In fact, I don't know if you guys knew that the hearing that was in place was about the feds removing funding, finally, from PBS, the Public Broadcasting Service, and NPR, because they have both become ideologically captured by the left. And so while the left tried to get up and say, oh, it's all about Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers, how could you take that? That's not what is the problem. So here in Indiana, there is a station called WFYI. And during the 2024 election cycle, WFYI invited Micah Beckwith, who is now the lieutenant governor of Indiana, and one other person to come be part of a panel debate on book bans and libraries putting out pornographic books in kids sections and school libraries and things like that. And I, who am an education guy and have done a lot of research and work on these books and what's bad about them and why, maybe we shouldn't show kids porn, Micah Beckwith invited me to be the other guy on this particular panel. And Micah Beckwith just told WFYI, hey, I'm bringing Tony Kinnett along. We're going to, come do the panel since, you wanted another person on the right side of the aisle. We're going to come do this. It'll be like a Saturday debate show thing. WFYI responded, no. We don't need Tony Kinnett. Thank you. Now, I've never been reprimanded by the FCC or by any network that I've appeared on ever. I've got quite a nice candor, I would say. And, when I'm opposite individuals on the left, on, more center-leaning networks or right-leaning networks that have a guy on the right and the left on, it's cordial. No problems there. And being a Hoosier, someone from Indiana, though I broadcast nationally, one might think, hey, maybe, having an education guy on the right on the education panel, kind of makes a lot of sense. They didn't like it. That is a classic case of a government station affiliate pulling the political nonsense chain again and again and again. NPR's entire editor board are registered Democrats. There are 0 Republicans. None at all. You have like over 70, 80 editors on the editorial board. None of them are on the right. 0. Yeah, for a government program, that's kind of a problem. There's some institutional bias there. Now, NPR's redacted a lot of headlines. PBS NewsHour has had to redact a lot of headlines. Deeply gross organizations. So the new head of NPR, and I say new because she's fairly new, Miss Mueller, she was being asked a couple of questions, and Representative Brandon Gill stepped up. Representative Brandon Gill is a freshman from Texas, and I first saw him well, actually, we had a conversation, I think, at a Young Conservatives of Texas event that I spoke at. Really nice guy. Following that, I got to see a Daily Signal sit-down interview with Bradley Devlin. That's over on our page. That was in January. Really excellent interview about the border. Brandon Gill did something very near and dear to my heart. He showed receipts to the head of NPR, this mayor lady, and it is truly fantastic. You got to see it.
Do you believe that America is addicted to white supremacy?
I believe that I tweeted that, and as I've said earlier, I believe much of my thinking has evolved over the last half decade.
It has evolved. Why did you tweet that?
I don't recall the exact context, sir, so I wouldn't be able to say.
Okay. Do you believe that America believes in black plunder and white democracy?
I don't believe that, sir.
You tweeted that in reference to a book you were reading at the time, apparently, The Case for Reparations.
I don't think I've ever read that book, sir.
You tweeted about it. You said you took a day off to fully read The Case for Reparations. You put that on Twitter in January of 2020.
Apologies, I don't recall that I did.
Okay.
I no doubt that your tweet there is correct, but I don't recall that.
I don't know about y'all, but if I have tweeted out about a book that I have read, I've probably read it. The only other case that one can make for, I don't remember reading this book, I don't recall, would be that you were tweeting out that you've read a book for social media credibility. You know, like, oh, I've read this, so look how much like you individuals I am, which is a worse answer, but could in fact be an honest answer. You know, didn't go with that. I don't recall.
Okay. Do you believe that white people inherently feel superior to other races?
I do not.
You don't? You tweeted something to that effect. You said, I grew up feeling superior. Ha, how white of me. Why did you tweet that?
I think I was probably reflecting on what it was to grow up in an environment where I had lots of advantages.
It sounds like you're saying that white people feel superior.
I don't believe that anybody feels that way, sir. I was just reflecting on my own experiences.
Do you think that white people should pay reparations?
I have never said that, sir.
Yes, you did. You said it in January of 2020. You tweeted, yes, the North, yes, all of us, yes, America, yes, our original collective sin and unpaid debt, yes, reparations, yes, on this day.
I don't believe that was a reference to fiscal reparations, sir.
What kind of reparations was it a reference to?
I think it was just a reference to the idea that we all owe much to the people who came before us.
That's a bizarre way to frame what you tweeted.
By the way, I went just for kicks and giggles. Not that, I mean, we all know that she's lying here. And no person with an IQ that is above Frosty would be able to argue that reparations can mean that we're supposed to think about who came before us. Oh my goodness. Oh no, please, Brandon, keep going.
Okay, how much reparations have you personally paid?
Sir, I don't believe that I've ever paid reparations.
Okay, it's just for everybody else.
I'm not asking anyone
Seems
to pay
to be what you're
reparations, sir.
suggesting. Do you believe that looting is morally wrong?
I believe that looting is illegal, and I refer to it as counterproductive. I think it should be prosecuted.
Do you believe it's morally wrong, though?
Of course.
Of course. Then why did you refer to it as counterproductive? It's a very different way to describe it.
It is both morally wrong and counterproductive, as well as being illegal.
You tweeted, it's hard to be mad about protests in reference to the BLM protests, not prioritizing the private property of a system of oppression. You didn't condemn the looting. You said that it was counterproductive. NPR also promoted a book called In Defense of Looting. Do you think that that's an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars?
I'm unfamiliar with that book, sir, and I don't believe that was at my time at NPR.
You tweeted that you read that book, but...
I don't...
That is exactly how it should be done, by the way. Anyone out there who is considering what is the best possible way to do combative analysis, in any case where you are holding someone accountable, is to actually show the receipts. That's how you do it. That is my favorite style of writing. If you go and read any of my reporting and writing, where it is analysis or it is reporting, if it says commentary underneath it, I can't guarantee it, but that's commentary. That's not necessarily analysis or reporting. When you see analysis or reporting under the story that I've written, you will see that it is filled with these fancy things called hyperlinks. And these hyperlinks link to a source that proves what I am suggesting as my assertion. That's how you do it. That's it. And what I've always said that the right struggles with down at its core is keeping a database, a record, a list of receipts. Because then, a couple of weeks later, the left comes up when you make an accusation because there's some kind of a big scandal. There's something out there that happens. There's a drag queen that's gyrating in front of a child in lingerie, and it's gross and it's disgusting, and everyone agrees. And then 3 weeks later, you will have some Democrats say, there's no drag queen that's ever done anything that could be damaging to a child. If you have the receipts, then you get to shove that in their face repeatedly and smack them with the screen. So, in the case of Brandon Gill versus the NPR head, all you have to do is say you tweeted that you bragged about how racial reparations you were and how awful you thought America was. And your company is garbage and it's terrible and it's biased and taxpayers shouldn't be funding this. And all she can say is, I've changed a lot over the last 5 years. I don't believe you. You're a liar. And the reason I can say you're a liar is because the evidence is right here in front of everyone. And so the reason the left is not going to get away with the Robert Muellering of Judge Boasberg, now in the second Trump administration, is because A, the media no longer has an iron grip over the American people. They threw away all trust with COVID-19, and they threw away all trust with the Joe Biden is totally okay, don't look at the corpse too closely routine. Even when it was blatantly, flagrantly obvious to Americans that Joe Biden was dead, the media stuck to it. Now they have nothing. People are leaving in droves. All of these outlets are on life support. They're firing hosts. They're reorganizing schedules. And now you have independent and right-leaning crews that are stepping into the space. And groups that are independent, they have to ride a little closer to the independent line. Otherwise, people will leave. That's a huge reason. Number two, and may I say just as consequential, is that we have far fewer examples of the internet as a series of tubes, Congressman. There aren't as many elderly, ancient of days people who are sitting on committees who, when an individual that is accused of something against the American people is brought before the congressional committee, you don't have some old man who for the first time is sitting there going,
it says here that the internet was made by Bill Jobs of Applesoft. Is that why my microwave reads 12 a.m. blinking?
And then the tech executive laughs, and everyone laughs, and is like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that aged corpse who was classmates with Abraham Lincoln is my congressperson. Now what you have is one of two things. Either you have a good freshman representative who's a little less, oh no, not a little, he's a lot less on the crazy yelling of some of the other younger Republican representatives. And he is straight to the facts. Here are the receipts. Here's what's going on. Why are you awful? All right. Seems pretty good to me. And if he doesn't do it, then you actually have people like Elon Musk in the Department of Government Efficiency and all these people online like me who are more than happy to dig up the receipts and then put them in a manila folder, send them to Congress and say, this is what you should ask Northwestern University and the University of California, Berkeley about. They violated the Jean Cleary Act by failing to report aspects of crimes that were against students during the pro-Hamas riots on your campuses. And then the congressperson can ask them about it in front of everyone and make the head of Northwestern look like a fool in front of everyone. And I got to do that. It's a magical time to be in this country. And that's one of the reasons why the whole Signal scandal fell apart in 48 hours. It's already out of the major headlines. It's already gone. I mean, you're going to have some Democrats yelling about it. Boasberg's going to try his darn tootinest, but the Mueller thing ain't working this time. Now, are the Democrats going to learn from that strategy and maybe move away and talk about the economy, which is probably their best bet if they avoid eggs and gas prices, and they can pray upon prayer that the Trump tariff things that some conservatives and Republicans have been warning about actually comes true, I guess. Well, doesn't look like they're going to do it. They're going to go all in on the same dead old tired strategy that works a little bit less every time. Time's going to tell if it's going to do anything. So far, not looking too good. With that said, we will be back tomorrow to round out the week with a little bit of mail time and also an upcoming meeting next week about Iran, and we have one of the guys to talk about it. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on The Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Take care.